Hey guys, hope you're well. So in the previous lessons, we've learned how to add fractions, subtract, multiply, and divide. Now, if you know how to do all of those different things, then we're just going to go put all of that together now, and we're going to do sums that look something like this. You're going to have multiply with a plus, you're going to have a divide with a minus, you're going to have some brackets, you're going to have some interesting things like that, and I'm going to just teach you how to put it all together. If you know how to do each of these four things by themselves, then putting them together is really, really straightforward. Okay, what we're going to do, we've all heard of BODMAS, okay? But I want to just tell you something very important. I want you to put a block around these two, and I want you to put a block around these two. We're going to call this block 1, and we're going to call this block 2. So, if you have anything from block 1, by the way, what does B stand for? B stands for brackets. Let's rather write it over here. Brackets. So we always do brackets first, if there are brackets. O stands for of. We're not going to get of in this lesson. And then the D, and the D stands for divide. M stands for multiply. A stands for add. And S stands for subtract. But what a lot of learners think is that because the D comes before the M, they think that division comes before multiplication. It's not true. Division and multiplication, they go together. So you can do any one of them first. And then addition and subtraction, they also go together. So you can do any one of them first. Now, if you ever see division and multiplication, they must always be done before you do addition and subtraction. So this is the most important one, that you do those first, and then you do these ones. Okay. But if there is an add and a subtract next to each other, then it doesn't matter which one is first. As long as a division and a multiplication always gets done before an add or a subtraction. Okay, so for example, here we have a multiply and here we have a plus. So what comes first? Well, block 1. So we're going to do this part first. Now, we know how to multiply fractions. So let's go do that part first. We know that when you multiply, if these numbers are nice and small, then you just take top times top, bottom times bottom. So that'll be 1 times 1, which is 1, 2 times 3, which is 6. There we go. That's the first step done. Now we just have an addition. Now, can you remember back to the lesson where we learned how to add and subtract? You see, guys, mathematics is actually just a combination of smaller little steps that we've learned about, and now we're just putting them all together. So can we remember how to add or subtract fractions? Well done if you remember. These two numbers must be the same. So 6 and 4, we're going to go look at their common multiples. So 6, 12, 18, 24. And we've done this in previous lessons, right? 4, 8, 12, 16. So can you see that they both share the number 12? So we will turn this and this into a 12 by multiplying this one by 2, and what you do at the bottom, you do at the top. And this you would multiply by 3, and what you do at the bottom, you do at the top. And so this will end up being 2 over 12 plus 3 over 12. Now, when those two numbers at the bottom are the same, you leave it as a 12. And then what is 2 plus 3? 5. Very important. Can your answer be simplified? No. There is no number that can go into both 5 and 12. And then secondly, is your answer an improper fraction? No, it's not. When the number at the top is smaller, that's called a proper fraction. This is a proper fraction. So that's the answer. So guys, you see how simple that is? We're breaking it, we're taking this big thing and we're breaking it up into smaller little steps that we've learned about in previous lessons. So for the rest of this lesson, we're just going to make some more challenging kind of examples, but it's all going to be the same thing. Okay. So let's do this one now. So with BODMAS, what can we see here? We can see there's a divide and there's a subtract. So if I write out BODMAS nice and big, we know that these two are more important than these two over here. So anything in number 1 must always be done before anything in number 2. So we're going to do the divide. Can we remember how to divide fractions? Kevin, I don't think I can remember that. Oh, are you sure? Remember, we did the lesson where we learned how to divide fractions and I taught you about KCF. If you haven't watched that, you need to make sure you've watched all of those little lessons first. So, remember, it stands for keep, change, flip. This is what we do when we divide fractions. So we don't even look at this part right now. We don't even care about that. We are focusing on this part, one part at a time, one part from here at a time. So we've learned with dividing fractions, you keep the first part the same. That means keep. Then you change it from a divide to a multiply, and then you flip the second fraction upside down. There we go. And then we just write the other part. Now, we know that when these numbers are nice and small, you can just multiply them across. You can break this number up into 2 times 3 if you want. That's not a problem. So, but I think these numbers are nice and small, so I'm just going to leave it like that. So what is 5 times 3? 15. What is 6 times 1? 6. There we go. Now we've got subtraction. Now remember, when you add or subtract fractions, the numbers at the bottom must be the same. Well, they are. Lucky for us. So we're simply going to say 15 minus 1, and that'll give us 14. Can your answer be simplified? Yes. The number 2 can go into both of these. I'll prove it to you. We could write 14 as 7 times 2, and we could write 6 as 3 times 2. Now you see how those 2's can cancel? And so we simply get left with 7 over 3. Is that an improper fraction? Or is that a proper fraction? Well done if you remember that that is a improper. Why? Because the number at the top is larger. So this is improper. So usually, if your answer is improper, change it to a mixed number. That's what teachers normally want you to do for the final. So can you remember how to change this to a mixed number? You see how mathematics is just all these little parts that we've learned put together. So how do we do this as a mixed number? Well, first of all, we write the number 3 at the bottom, just like we see it there. Now, how many times can 3 fit inside 7? Well, that'll be twice. Okay. Now, what is 2 times 3? That is 6. So you have to put a 1 here because 6 plus 1 gives you 7. Okay. So we've looked at how to do improper to mixed and things like that. Here's our next one. So with BODMAS, we know that B is brackets. So brackets always come first. Now listen carefully here. I've just told you that when you have a divide and a multiply, that'll always be more important than an add and a subtract. So here we have a plus and here we have a multiply. So you might be thinking, so we're going to do this one first. But we've learned, well, we know from BODMAS that brackets are in the very beginning. So brackets are the most important. So we will go and do this part first, even though that is an add, which is normally not as important as a multiply. But because it's in a bracket, we will go and do it first. All right. So if you look inside the bracket now, what part of maths is that? Adding fractions. Do we know how to add fractions? Well, yes. We know that the number at the bottom must be the same. So we need to go get a lowest common multiple. So if we count in 4s, and then if we count in 3s, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, can we all see that there is a common number 12? So we're going to change both of those to a 12. How? Well, to change this one, you multiply by 3. What you do to the bottom, you do to the top. Here you multiply by 4. What you do to the bottom, you do to the top. I don't care about this part. I'm not even looking at that right now. And so that's going to give us 3 over 12 plus 8 over 12. And then the rest, I'm not even going to look at. Okay, now we know from how to add fractions when these numbers are the same. That's perfect. And so then you're just going to say, 3 plus 8 is going to be 11. Okay, so there we finish. Now you can take the bracket away. That's important that you take the bracket away because we are now finished with the bracket. Okay, now we can come back to this part over here where divide and multiply is more important than add and subtract. So here we see a multiply. Do we know how to multiply? Yes, Kevin has taught us that when the numbers are very small, you can just multiply across and across. But these numbers are not very small. So what we've learned is that we can rather try and rewrite the numbers. Like, for example, let's just write this 11 over 12. I can change this to 3 multiplied by 7, and I could change this to 4 multiplied by 4. And then I can change this to 5 multiplied by 4, for example. And then this I can change to 7 multiplied by 2. And now what we've been taught is that when multiplying fractions, we can always cancel something at the top with anything at the bottom. So for example, this 4 can cancel this 4. This 7 can cancel this 7. And so what we now have is we still have this 11 over 12 from here. Now, what do we have left? We still have a 3 and a 4 at the top, so a 3 and a 4. And now a 5 and a 2. Now, I don't know about you, but these are nice small numbers. So now we might as well just go and multiply top and top, bottom and bottom. And that'll give us 3 multiplied by 5 is 15. 4 multiplied by 2 is 8. Okay, now we are adding fractions. So we've learned that when you add fractions, the numbers at the bottom must be the same. So we can go have a look at the lowest common multiple. So we count in 12. So 12, 24, 36. If you count in 8s, you would go 8, 16, 24. There's 24. So there's the number 24. So to change this to a 24, we will multiply by 2. What we do to the bottom, we do to the top. And this one, you'll multiply by 3. And so that will give us 22 over 24 plus 15 times 3 is 45 over 24. Now, the two numbers at the bottom are the same. So we can just say, let's actually write it here, over 24. Now, what is 22 plus 45? That'll be 67. Okay, so can your answer be simplified? Well, no. I don't think there's a number that can go into both of those. You can always check it on your calculator by just typing it in. No, it doesn't simplify. Okay, but now is this a mixed number? Well, is this an improper fraction? Yes, it is, because the number at the top is bigger than the number at the bottom. So we need to change it to a mixed number. That's usually what your teacher's going to ask. So it's easy. How do you, how many times can the number 24 fit inside 67? Well, if you count in 24s, it goes 24, 48, 72. Okay, so 72 is a little bit too far because we only want to go for 67. So it can only fit in twice. So we put a big number 2 over here. Now, if it was twice, that would take us to 48. But we want to go all the way to 67. So what is 67 minus 48? Well, that'll be 19. So that is our remainder, 19. And so that will be the final answer. Here's our next one. So this one's pretty straightforward. We know that from BODMAS, division and multiplication, they go together, and then add and subtract, they can go together. So here we have a divide, and then here we have a multiply, and here we have an add. So we can do this one, and we can do this one at the same time, because divide and multiply go together. The one is not stronger than the other. So we could actually work on both of these at the same time. So we know that when you divide, we always think of KCF. I hope you're beginning to realize that mathematics, and this will be the same all the way up to grade 12, it's just what they'll do is they'll teach you the little parts like divide fractions, multiply fractions, plus, subtract, and then they'll just combine it all together. But when they combine it all together, you're still going to solve little bits and pieces using the basic rules. Okay? So we know that with dividing fractions, we keep the first fraction the same, we change it to a multiply, and then we flip the second fraction upside down. Then let's just go straight to this one now. So we've learned that you can multiply top and top, bottom and bottom. You are allowed to do that. But what Kevin has taught us is that when the numbers are a little bit big, like these ones are, maybe we could break them down a little bit first. For example, we could change this to a 5 times 2. We could change this to a 4 times 4. I'm going to leave this one as a 4. And then you could change this to 5 times 3. And then let's just go, because the reason I did that is we've learned that when you multiply fractions, you can cancel anything at the top with anything at the bottom. And so we could even cancel out those. And so what we now have is, I'm going to do the same over here. You can see these numbers are a little bit big. I don't want to work with such big numbers. So what I'll do is I'll keep this as a 4. Then I'll change this one to 4 times 4. And I'll change this to 3 times 4. The reason is that I can now cancel that 3 and that 3 that 4 and that 4 and that 4 and that 4. And then we've still got all of this over here. So we just have a 2 at the top. We have a 4 at the bottom. We have nothing here, so I'll put a 1. And then we've got a 3 over there. And then if I go rewrite this, we've got nothing here and nothing here. So I'm just going to say 1 over 1 and 1 over 1. You see how we're making the numbers nice and small? Okay, so now that these numbers are nice and small, you're just going to say top times top, bottom times bottom. So that's actually just going to give us 1 over 1 plus. Now here we're just going to go top times top and bottom times bottom. So that'll be 2 over 12. Okay, now there's different ways you could do this. Some of you might realize that these two numbers here could simplify each other, but if you didn't, it doesn't matter. The beautiful thing is that we're all going to get the same answer at the end. Okay, so I'll quickly show you what I mean. If I change the number 12 to 2 times 6, then all of a sudden, those 2's can cancel. And so then you're just left with 1 over 1 plus. Now there's nothing at the top here, so I'll just put a 1. And then here you just have a 6 at the bottom. Okay, now we're adding fractions. So to add fractions, we know that the denominators must be the same. So all I need to do actually is just change this one to a 6. And I can easily do that by just doing that and that. And so that'll give us 6 over 6 plus 1 over 6. And so 6 plus 1, well, that'll give us 7. Can your answer be simplified? No, it can't. But is your answer improper or mixed? Well, improper or proper? This is a improper fraction because the number at the top is bigger. So we can actually write this as a mixed number. And so how many times can the number 6 go into the number 7? Well, that'll only be once. And then there'd be a remainder of 1. And so there is our final answer for this one. Here's our next example. We just have this one, and then we just have one more after that. So with BODMAS, we know that brackets should always come first. Okay, so we'll do the bracket first. Now, I've said here that all mixed numbers should first be converted into fractions. It just makes our life a little bit easier. So that's our first step, okay? We're going to go and change this and this into mixed numbers. So we know that to do that, you say well, first of all, we know that this one's answer will be over 4. And this one's answer will be over 8. So the way we do it is we say 2 multiplied by 4, which is 8. 8 plus 3 is 11. With this one, we say 1 times 8, which is 8, plus 1, which is then 9. Now, within this bracket, what are we doing? We're minusing fractions. We know that when you add or subtract fractions, denominators must be the same. So if you count in 4s, you could go 4, 8, 12. If you count in 8s, you could go 8, 16, 24. So there's the number 8, which will be common for both. So let's just use that. And so that means we'll just have to change this one to an 8 by multiplying by 2. And what you do at the top, you do at the bottom, you do at the top. And so now we end up with 22 over 8, take away 9 over 8. Now we can just say over 8. 22 take away 9 will give us 13, and then here we have divided by 1 over 4. Okay, so now we are dividing fractions. So we know that when you divide fractions, we do keep, change, flip. So we keep the first fraction the same. We change the sign from a divide to a multiply, and then we flip the fraction upside down. Now, technically you can go top times top, bottom times bottom. However, the numbers are a little bit big, and we can make it a bit better by doing this. We can change this one to 2 times 4, because that's the same as 8. Then this 4 and this 4 can cancel, because remember when you're multiplying fractions, anything at the top can cancel with anything at the bottom. And so now all that we have left is 13 over 2 multiplied by, there's nothing over here, so we'll just say 1 over 1. Now we can just say top times top, bottom times bottom, which will give us that. Can you simplify 13 over 2? No. Is it a improper fraction? Yes, it is. So we need to change this to a mixed number. How do we do that? Well, we know that the number is going to be over 2. So how many times can 2 go into 13? That's 6 times, right? And then 6 times 2 is 12, and so there's still 1 remaining. And so the answer will be 6 and 1 over 2. Here's our last example. So here we have, what we can see is we've got a divide over here, then we've got a subtract, and then we've got a divide. So from BODMAS, we know that divide and multiply are more important than add and subtract. So we will do the divides first. So we can do this part, and then this part, and then we'll just put them together with a minus. So don't put this minus with the 1, just treat this as one thing, like that, treat this as one thing, and then we'll just subtract them later on. Okay, so step 1 though, we always want to change mixed numbers into fractions in the beginning, and then at the very end, then we usually change it back to a mixed number. But in order to do calculations, we like to change it from a mixed number into a normal fraction. So for this part over here, you're going to say 2 multiplied by 5, which is 10. 10 plus 2 is 12. Here you're going to say 1 multiplied, sorry, the answer will be over 10. You're going to say 1 multiplied by 10 plus 7 is going to be 17. Then for this part, you're going to say 1 multiplied by 20 plus 1 is 21. And then here you're going to say 1 multiplied by 5 plus 2 will give you 7. Now, we know that when you divide fractions, we like to think of KCF. Keep, change, flip. So keep the first one as it is, change the sign, and then flip this one upside down. So 10 over 17. And then for this part here, we're going to do the same. So you keep the first fraction, you change it to a multiply, and then you flip it upside down. Now, we know that when you multiply, you can go top times top, bottom times bottom, but those numbers are a little bit big. So what I would rather say is, what we could do, okay, I wouldn't change this 12. The reason is there is nothing at the bottom that you would be able to cancel it with. So I'm actually just going to leave it as 12. 5 I'm going to leave as 5. For the 10, I'm going to change it to 5 times 2. And then the 17, there's nothing you can really do there. Then for this part, I'm going to change this to 7 times 3. And then 5 times 4 for this one. And then the 5 over 7, you can't really do anything. Because what you'll see now is that this 5 and this 5 can cancel. And then for this part over here, this 7 and this 7 can cancel. And this 5 and this 5 can cancel. And so what we are left with is 12 over 1, because there's nothing there, multiplied by 2 over 17, minus 3, because there's a 3, and then a 4 at the bottom there. And then for this part, there's nothing. So you could think of it as 1 over 1, but you can actually just leave it out. Okay, now we can go top times top, bottom times bottom. So that's going to give us 24 over 17, take away 3 over 4. Now, when we subtract or add fractions, the denominators have to be the same. So we need to go get a common denominator here. Now, that's going to be quite a tricky one. So I'm going to count in 17s. So 17, 34, 51, 68, 85. Then I'm going to count in 4s. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32. This is a tricky one. 36, 40. If you had to keep going, you will eventually get to 68. And so that is the one we have to use. So to make this into a 68, you would actually have to multiply it by 17, top and bottom. And to make this one go to 68, you would actually have to multiply it by 4, top and bottom. Wow, some big numbers here. And so 24 times 4 is 96. So we're going to get 96 over 68. Take away. 3 times 17 is 51 over 68. And so the answer will be over 68. So what is 96 minus 51? Well, that would be 45. I would then just type that on my calculator to see if it can simplify. No, it can't. And is this an improper or a proper fraction? That is a proper fraction because the number at the top is smaller. And so that is the answer.